Hello, printmakers. So we're going to now go over how to print the screens you've created using your drawing fluid and screen fill. The materials you'll need are your speedball screen printing stencil kits and the paper you want to edition on. As you can see, once again, we're working on that clean flat surface we've been working on in all the previous videos. Once again, our screen is locked in using the clamps, but you can just as well do it without it with the assistance of another person.
So create a clean flat surface to work on and sandwich the screen with the clamps. The assistance of another individual can be used to print as an alternative in the clamps, like Brett said, and use a scrap piece of wood or a roll of tape to prop up the screen so it is not in contact with the table or board. And then, as you can see, we're generously applying a big pool of ink at the top of the screen and using a piece of cardboard or old gift card, which you can see here. Or a plastic spoon, and be sure again to be generous with the amount of ink. You need a lot of ink to flood the screen here, so feel like you've got lots of that. And you can see me applying the ink in generous amounts and then scraping it off the
squeegee there, Sam.
Thanks. And the scraping out the squeegee and putting a huge amount of ink at the top as we get ready to print.
As Sam said, when you're flooding the screen, essentially what you're doing with all that generous ink he emphasized is pulling it back and forth using a 45-degree angle until you cover that entire design. So essentially until that ink is pressed up against all those little holes in the screen. And as he said, you can add more ink whenever it's necessary.
I'm going to take a moment here to rewind just to make note of the idea of a registration space. And I'm using my cursor to go back and forth over it. But I hope you all can see that gaffer tape so that our paper is going right up into that corner there right before we print, and making sure that I registered the paper right into that space with those two angles the same every single time prior to printing, to make sure that my print lays down on the paper in the same way each and every time that I do my printing.
So as Sam said, using that great registration system and that great point, you're going to place and align the paper underneath the screen. This registration system will allow it to be the same every single time. You'll remove the wedge and let the screen rest on the paper. And if you don't have clamps, having somebody hold that screen firm to the tabletop or your flat surface is the way to go.
Using a generous pressure, pull the squeegee down the screen at a 45-degree angle, push the ink through the openings in the screen fill. You can pull multiple passes of ink if and when necessary, and remove the paper from beneath the screen. So like Brett said, you know, in previous videos, that sometimes you don't get your first print to be perfect and just right. You might need to apply more pressure. You might need to make small adjustments to control for things. And you can see that first print, we had some big pooling of ink. So we need to figure out exactly what was our issue there. As we continue to print this edition, it came out that if you apply great amounts of pressure on one side, the side that wasn't clamped down, you definitely got a much cleaner print. But you have to experiment with these things to figure out what are just the right conditions to get your best print and get a great edition happening for you.
And so in between those two prints, we've gone ahead and reflooded the screen, and Sam has added additional ink. Reflooding, you're just pushing that ink back to the top to cover up cover those portions that you've pushed through. So you're ready to print the second one. And then Sam will lay the paper there using that same registration process, pushing that wooden piece out of the way. Sorry, getting ahead of myself here. And then go ahead and lay the screen down just like you did in the first one, and apply larger amounts of pressure on the left side, so Sam's left side, your right side, to ensure the print comes out. As we wait in suspense. So Sam also did an additional second pass on that print as well, just to ensure that the ink was pushed to the screen.
So you can see here that two things. One, I noticed that one of my hands has a glove on it, and that's the hand that comes in contact with the ink and the squeegee. And that the second thing is that the other hand comes in contact with the paper, and that hand doesn't have a glove. I'd like you to notice. And that the two variables that we said, okay, the issue might be ink, enough ink, and the issue might be enough pressure. And once we applied those two variables, we were fixed for the problem of the previous print where we were getting some flooding. So this is the type of process that we're talking about, that as you experiment and figure things out and figure out what is the right variable that you need to change in order to get your printmaking into the right space. And so we're really happy that this video gave an opportunity for you to see some of that processing happening. All right.
Sounds good to me here, Sam.
Thanks again, printmakers. Thanks for joining us. Sorry this is getting so drawn out, but we're just trying to give you all the information we possibly can. Take care.
And as you know, Sam and I will be here to answer any of your questions as you go along.
All right. See you next time.
Bye.